Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Organized Crime News Weekly, a show where we dissect the recent developments that have gone on in the world of organized crime the past week. And for this first story, we are going to Mexico, where Canadian fugitive Matthew Belanger was shot dead in Playa del Carmen, Quintana Roo, Mexico. That's where Cancun is. And he was shot as he was getting into his car after a gym session. And his killers came on a motorcycle to assassinate him. Belanger was a member of a group called Freitrim, which is sponsored by full-patch Hells Angels named Vincent Boulanger. Belanger coordinated cocaine shipments to Quebec from Mexico, fled to Mexico in 2022 after being charged with improper storage and unauthorized possession of weapons. He is believed to have been killed by Los Chapitos. Los Chapitos are the sons of El Chapo. They are currently in a war over control of the Sinaloa cartel with the Mayos faction, which was formerly led by El Mayo Zambada, but is now led by his son, Mayito Flaco. Belanger is not the first example of a Canadian organized crime figure going down to Canada and being subsequently assassinated. There was the incident last year where an organized crime figure by the name of Sammy Tamaro was killed in the same region of Mexico as well. So there's been quite a history of Canadians, whether they're fugitives or they're running away from assassins, going down to Mexico and subsequently being assassinated. As I mentioned in last week's episode, the Canadian Hells Angels are pretty entrenched in international organized crime. They've formed solid links with Mexican drug cartels, as was the case with Belanger. He obviously formed links with Los Chapitos, who are the most dominant faction of the Sinaloa cartel, and he was responsible for facilitating huge shipments of cocaine into Quebec. So his death is a very big blow to the Hells Angels and to the group that they sponsored called Freitrim, which is the group that Belanger was a part of. It's unknown exactly who's responsible for the assassination at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if it was assassins from the Mayos faction, because obviously there's a big struggle going on with those Chapitos at the moment. Or it could be the CJNG, who really knows. The CJNG have been at odds with the Sinaloa cartel for years now. Okay, for our next story, we are going to Stockton, California, where international drug smuggler Sunil Yadav was gunned down after gunmen burst into his home. Prominent Indian gangsters Goldie Brar and Rohit Gadara claimed responsibility for the murder on social media, which is something I don't understand about Indian gangsters. For some reason, they like to brag about their murders on social media. It's not very smart, but that's what they do. And they are lieutenants of powerful Indian gangster Lawrence Bishnoi, who is currently locked up back in India, awaiting trial for various crimes, but he still manages to control his empire from prison with the use of a cell phone. And he has people all across America, Canada, everywhere. And Yadav was once aligned with Bishnoi, but fell out after he collaborated with the Punjabi police. Punjabi is a region in India. He collaborated with Punjabi police in tracking down a Bishnoi ally named Ankit Badu, who was killed in an encounter with the police in 2019. Yadav fled India 2 years ago. Before that, he had been living in Dubai, where he was arrested and extradited back to India for the murder of a jeweler, and he was later released on bail. So the gunmen have still not been apprehended, but there seems to be little doubt that Lawrence Bishnoi and his associates were responsible for this murder that occurred this past week. All right, for our next story, we are going to South Africa, where a man named Craig Stanfield was shot dead by members of a rival gang called the Rude Boys. He had just walked out of prison that morning after being acquitted of attempted murder charges. He is the cousin of Ralph Stanfield. Ralph Stanfield is a very prominent gangland figure in Cape Town, South Africa. He ran a construction company. Ralph Stanfield is a very prominent figure in gangland, Cape Town in South Africa. He was responsible for a lot of the extortion that was going on involving construction companies, him and his wife. And they are part of a group called The Firm, which has a tight grip on all of the construction projects going on in the Cape Town area. And Craig Stanfield is the third relative of Ralph Stanfield to have been gunned down in the past year. He had a couple of cousins gunned down the previous year, so a lot of people have been targeting Stanfield's family, and Stanfield is currently imprisoned along with his wife, and they are due to go on trial for a murder as well as their construction rackets sometime beginning of next year. Okay, now we're going to Syria, where there has been a lot of news going on lately because of the fall of the regime of Bashar al-Assad. Syrian authorities recently torched a stockpile of drugs, including 1 million Captagon pills. Captagon is an amphetamine in a pill form. Some people call it a poor man's cocaine or meth. It's very prominent in the Gulf states and the Gulf countries, and Syria has been accused of exporting Captagon to fund their regime in the face of sanctions by other countries. Bashar al-Assad was specifically linked with the Captagon industry, and also his brother Mar al-Assad, who was more specifically involved with the day-to-day operations of the Captagon trade. It remains to be seen what will become of the Captagon trade in Syria. Now that Assad has been overthrown, it might be taken up by other militias throughout Syria. Syria has so many different parties involved right now, so it could come under the wing of the HTS, who now currently governs Syria, or it could come under some other group, who knows. But Assad was responsible for much of the Captagon flowing into countries like Saudi Arabia and Jordan, and his departure has definitely left a void in this market. Last week we talked about Othman el-Baluti, the Belgian Arab drug lord who was just recently arrested in Dubai. This week he was sentenced to 20 more years in prison after a court in Antwerp convicted him of being behind 11 tons of a cocaine shipment that was intercepted in the port of Antwerp in April 2021. The shipment had a value of 275 million euros or $286 million, and he is still currently in Dubai. They're trying to extradite him to Belgium, but these things take quite a while, and he's already got 7 years he's got to serve for another sentence imposed on him back in September. So once he gets back to Belgium, he's going to have to do some serious time. All right, and our final story of the day, we are coming back to America for this story. It concerns Hawaii crime boss Mike Misk, who had been found dead in his prison cell December 1st. It was determined that he died from a fentanyl overdose, and they're still determining exactly how he would have OD'd on fentanyl because he was not a hard drug user. He was convicted back in July of many crimes, most notably of murdering a man named Jonathan Frazier, who was a close friend of his son Caleb, and he blamed him for his son's death in a car accident back in 2016, so Misk is believed to have ordered his murder. He was also convicted of running a criminal enterprise that engaged in drug trafficking and selling illegal fireworks, as well as kidnapping and assault and using chemical weapons. All right, that's going to do it for this week of Organized Crime News Weekly. Join back in next week for more news on the global underworld. Thank you so much for joining.